Travels of the Ellis Arbor is an audio narrative set in the world of Bastion using 5e compatible characters. A dark fantasy world with chaos, intrigue, magic, and mystery. The story, setting, and sounds are written by Lonomy and published by lonomy.creative. Tune in for episode 2, Belong. In stark contrast to the serenity of Darian's keepsake, the tavern around him erupted with noise. Chairs and glass tankards scatter and the sound of breaking glass echoed throughout mostly the empty floor. Turning in his chair, he looked up toward the bar where Moore and Edward were encumbered with a group of 3 colourful locals. One stood tall at over twice Ed's size. The other 2, shorter and more pronounced, with fishermen's hooks and implements hanging loosely from their belts. They appeared to be the town's regular patrons, eager for their morning nourishment. Their choice of breakfast appeared to be more of the unsavoury kind. "Nobody of the likes of him gets served here. No monsters, no mushrooms, no greenskins, none of you. Get your pet out." "Oh dear, you can't possibly understand how grotesquely wrong you are, my good man. Moore here is a cherished companion and hardly harbours any ill will to you or this..." The conversation is cut short as one of the 2 fishermen flanking the large man pulled a knife from his belt, turning it menacingly in his hand. "How about you leave us in peace and take off somewhere that you're all welcome? Dig a hole, I'm sure that'll sort you." The fisherman, dangerously handling his knife, gave a sharp cough as spittle and grease leapt from his beard and onto the floor. Slowly, turning to the front of the booth, Darian called out toward the bar, addressing his companions. His alarming speed and finesse made him almost move like a corporeal shadow, hastening to his feet. "Ed, why don't you pass another 10 gold to the tender? I'm sure it'll cover our charge." "Oh, right. I guess it's that kind of establishment." No sooner as Edward began scrambling for his coin purse, Darian unhooked the pistol at his belt, drawing it aloft and pulled the trigger. In a moment, the entire floor erupted in an explosion of sound, echoing through the windows and causing those nearby to duck for cover. A handful of patrons scattered throughout the tavern, beginning to cower as a bullet rocketed through the air. In one fell shot, Darian aimed squarely for the knife-wielding brute, his slicer pistol cutting through the air like an explosive razor. With a wet crack, the knife dug squarely into the base of the adjacent bar, and 2 of the brute's fingers spread gingerly across the warped, damp floorboards. "What the bloody hell? He's got a gun, boss! He's firing at us! My fingers! My bloody hand!" The other thug, taking a large iron hook from his belt, made a heavy, sluggish motion toward Darian, before being stopped by a meaty, calloused hand. Their leader stopping him from advancing toward the captain. Darian stood almost motionless, smoke still petering from the barrel as his aim now turned toward the tallest of the thugs. His next shot would be between his eyes. "Hey, you. You're clearly new in town. We don't mean to go starting fights in bars, you hear? Monsters and monstrous folk have been making it hard for the rest of us. They come from all over, ally with the pointy-eared nobles, and rise through the ranks before any of us get a taste of a lick of silver. This is our home, so you start acting like a guest." He then turned back toward Ed, who had feverishly begun to count out another 10 gold pieces from his purse. Moore, a stalwart and unmoving figure, stared down the trio, his eyes unmoving and his palms clenched in preparation. "Don't go thinking you're welcome here, Mushroom Man. There are no homes for beasts other than the lands they came from. Take whatever you fancy and find yourselves another pile of dirt to squat in." And with that, the three men, one clutching his right hand in anguish, made for the entrance of the tavern, swinging the heavy door shut with an aggressive bang. At this point, a wooden door at the reverse side of the tavern creaked open, as their green-skinned companion, Nout, stepped out, having just used the lavatory to wash his face and hands.
I imagine that we won't be staying here long then, Captain. Not often that you shoot first. I expect those fishermen had it coming.
With a brisk flick of his wrist, Darian holstered his pistol and turned toward his coffee, quaffing it in a single gulp. I imagine so. Not often the fight starts off so quickly before the sun has fully risen. I know when we are not welcome. We'll find elsewhere for lodging. At this point, their attention turned toward the barkeep. Neatly dressed and with hands elbow-deep in flour and oil, she started over toward the table, pushing the gold coins back toward Ed as he counted. This is unnecessary. What they did was wrong. I have no problem with you. Please, keep your gold. The morning crew are rowdy and cumbersome. Pay them no mind. What they didn't expect to see was another non-human creature, standing and addressing them from behind the bar. Skin dark and charred, as if dappled by brimstone and marble patterns. A pair of short, crown-like horns peaked in front of a messily kept bun, her hair mottled in greens and browns, though her most drawing feature were her eyes, green and glowing, as if two polished gemstones of jade. Indeed, she was not of the people of Farreach. You can all call me Jenya. I come from Obelisk about 10 years ago, and the locals have tried to kick me about ever since. I bought Bristol Mill with my own gold, and I have run it to serve the people of the Briny Wood ever since. It takes time to get them on your side, though. They can be good people, they're just resentful, untrusting. And with this, she turned toward her bar, looking through drawers and cupboards, before she pulled a small, cured sheet of vellum and held it toward the crew. Do you have a city permit? She gestured toward the slip of paper in her hand. Darian simply cocked his head before murmuring a negative response. You need approval of the local councillors before you can access a room at a tavern or an inn. Same goes if you ever wanted to buy a lodge. I'd offer you a room under the table, but they would close the mill if they ever found out. She began to continue her advice before Darian cut her short, heading for the door. More, Ed, Nout, come. Jenya, I apologize for being a burden this morning. Keep the gold. I'm sure it'll go a long way to proving our standing. No, wait. Listen, let me help you. It's the least I can do for travelers of foreign realms. Darian stopped, turning toward the barkeep once more. He gestured with his hand, loosely affirming her as he called to the rest of the crew to wait. Just outside the city walls, there is an old lighthouse. It used to be abandoned, but some religious folk bought it and turned it into a place of worship. I'm not sure who they revere, but the sailors call it the Abbey. If you need a place to stay for the evening, try there. It's outside the guards' jurisdiction, and they are bound to welcome travelers who come from across the sea. A look of concern wormed its way through the crew. Nout and Ed turned to the captain, unsure of his response. With a pause, Darian shared a knowing look with his companions. A frown and a look of displeasure. They would have no choice in the matter. They had to deal with these folk. Indeed. Thank you for your concern, Jenya. Also, thank you for the coffee. Perhaps we'll return once arrangements are made. Great! You are welcome to share a meal. If you manage to secure a permit, I'd be happy to prepare rooms for you also. Her voice carried off as the crew headed for the door, back into the streets of the briny ward. Discouraged and deflated, Ed heaved his pack onto his shoulder, addressing the captain. I'm not sure I like Far Reach, Captain. They seem awfully sullen and defensive. Are you sure this abbey is the right choice? You know as well as I do, Ed. This might be the only choice. His voice trailed off as he looked northward, up the cobblestone path toward a junction where carriages and carts began to line the streets. Caravans and merchants bringing their wares in for the day's trade, setting up shop in the terrace at the top of the hill, though it was not the bustling, mercantile business that he was drawn to. Staring down the curving streets, a flash of red and a brilliant velvet cloak against the grey stone. Eyes that burned with a fiery coal and a wooden staff that clicked upon the ground with every step. Flanking the red figure, 2 of the city guard, manacles holding their prisoner in check. As the crew turned to face what had drawn Darian's gaze, a similar look of disbelief crept upon their faces as the 5th and final member of their crew was marched down the lane toward Bristol Mill. Travels of the Ellis Arbor is made possible by the generous support of our subscribers, followers, and most notably, our patrons. Thanks to Rob Jenkin, Ensign Turtle, and Nathan Ebley for supporting us so far on this journey. Please subscribe, give a like or a comment, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget, take care of each other.